Outer Wilds is a hard game to recommend to people, for a few reasons. It's in a genre that's hard to describe. It's a lot of stuff. It's a mystery game, a puzzle game, an adventure game, an exploration game, a Newtonian physics simulator, maybe even a Metroidvania. Wikipedia has it listed as an action-adventure game, but that is a wholly insufficient description. I've heard people say it's like Subnautica meets Majora's Mask, and that's better, but for most people that's not going to be useful information. You'd only really understand why that's true if you played it. Normally when you have an esoteric game like this, the easiest way to get someone to understand it is to just keep talking. Explain its various facets in great detail. Drown your listeners in content, and after a while they can decide if they find what they hear appealing. The problem here is that doing that is out of the question, because Outer Wilds is incredibly sensitive to spoilers. And that isn't just me being a spoiler hawk. Outer Wilds is uniquely affected by spoilers. In a lot of ways, the story and the gameplay are the same thing. And this makes me quite tight-lipped about the game. I don't want to tell you anything, because almost anything I might describe to get you interested is information you may enjoy a lot more if you discover it yourself, even if typically you don't care about spoilers. This creates a dilemma. I want to get people interested in what I consider a nearly peerless masterpiece, but I don't want to tell them anything about it. How do I do that? Well, I've decided I can't. Making a case for a game requires that I at least explain what makes it compelling. So while this video will be as spoiler-free as I can make it, I do intend to talk about the premise and the first half hour or so of the story to provide context. I would highly recommend that you turn off my video and just go play Outer Wilds if you want to go in completely blind. The premise of Outer Wild is that you are a Hearthian, a fledgling race of blue-skinned bipedal aliens. Your species has only recently developed the ability to travel through space. Outer Wilds Ventures is the organization created to send astronauts into space in the hopes of improving Hearthian understanding of other planets and of the Nomai, an ancient race of aliens whose ruins can be found across the solar system. Astronauts, then, are part explorers and part archaeologists. The protagonist is the space program's newest recruit, and the game begins on the day of your first solo launch. As is tradition, you camp out the night before your maiden voyage. You wake up, you get your ship launch codes, as well as the first working Nomai translator, and are sent off into adventure. Here as the player you are free. You can do as you please. Go to any of the planets, find Nomai ruins, find other astronauts, or go where no Hearthian has gone before. However, no matter how you choose to spend your time, you will quickly discover that your time is limited. The sun exploded, killing you and destroying the solar system. And then, surprisingly, you wake up and discover that you are in a time loop. That is the premise of this game. It hopes to entice you with many questions. Why is the sun exploding? How can I stop it? Why am I stuck in a time loop? Who were the Nomai? What did they want? And what happened to them? With these initial questions in mind, you set off, seeking answers. The beginning of Outer Wilds gives you unparalleled freedom. You can begin your explorations in any of the planets, and there's no obvious reason to choose one over the other. On any of the planets you will find something that catches your eye. Your initial motivations to explore are the big mysteries that serve as your long-term goals. But when you land somewhere and begin your investigations, you'll discover more and more about the planets and the Nomai that once inhabited them. Old mysteries will be recontextualized, and new mysteries will stand beside them. You'll hear key phrases over and over. You'll hear about important places and projects. That information will start to make sense, and will begin to interlink with each other. Or it will link with completely new information you had yet to discover. It will start to guide you to new planets or new places, prompting you to explore further. The amount of information might seem overwhelming, but don't worry, you don't actually have to remember all of it all the time. nor will you need to resort to writing it down on a piece of paper as you play, although that could have been fun in its own way. All the relevant discoveries will be logged on your ship for you to review at your leisure. It will even show how some things are connected. You can choose how to interact with these various plot lines. You can chase information on a specific topic wherever you think you'll find more about it, and if you get stuck, you can leave it for later and explore elsewhere. What keeps you as a player interested is your curiosity. The things that you discover are well written and genuinely interesting. They do a great job at keeping you hungry for more knowledge. The big goals given to you at the beginning are still there, but it's the smaller mysteries that keep you moving. Your desire to know how your immediate goals connect to the bigger mysteries keeps your curiosity alive. Now, from what I've described, you might be tempted to assume Outer Wilds is a walking simulator, but nothing could be further from the truth. Your actual movement is both fluid and fun. Moving your ship in space, or effectively using your jetpack, can require a bit of skill. Your primary resources are knowledge and time, but the planets are all different and many of them change over time. Each planet poses a different challenge for the player to deal with, like more gravity, which makes the jetpack less useful, a constantly rising ground level, which threatens to crush you as you explore, a rain of meteors that periodically destroys parts of the planet. You need to overcome these obstacles and even take advantage of them to progress to your objectives and acquire more of the story. The ship and character movement is your means of doing that. There are a lot of situations that make Outer Wilds feel like a very well-made platformer. Now here's the really interesting thing about Outer Wilds. What really sets it apart. Outer Wilds has no power-ups. You can't level up to get stronger. There's no way to upgrade your equipment or your ship. Everything that you have on your first launch is exactly what you'll have throughout the whole game. However, despite that, Outer Wilds is a Metroidvania. Metroidvanias are characterized by gated exploration. You can't explore in a direction unless you have the correct tool or power-up that lets you. Once you have that power-up, you can explore new areas in previously discovered locations. Outer Wilds works exactly in the same way, except here, the power-ups are knowledge. As you pursue the mysteries of the solar system, you will eventually get stuck. There will be something you want to do, or someplace you want to get to, but you can't. And the reason that you can't is because you don't know how. Maybe you're trying to get to the core of a certain planet. You could do it easily if you knew what to do, but you don't. You don't have the right power-up. The process of following a questline, finding a crucial piece of information that you didn't have before, and then realizing you can use that information in a place that you've been, is one of this game's greatest joys. It's even better when you realize that these power-ups can sometimes be used in a variety of different situations. Like in a Metroid game, once you have the super missile, you can open all the green doors, not just the one you were trying to open. This is a genius system. This intrinsically ties the game's lore with progression. The story that you're getting out of the Nomai text that you're translating is intrinsically linked to the knowledge necessary to progress. You get both from the same lines of text. Essentially, they're the same thing. Information is your reward for exploration. And because the lore and the gameplay are so tightly woven, that reward is more valuable. The reward isn't just a clue to get into a new location. It's also lore that elaborates on the greater mysteries. And the same holds true vice versa. The lore isn't just flavor text that creates a nice atmosphere, it is intrinsically tied to the power-ups you need to progress. This is the reason I said Outer Wilds is uniquely affected by spoilers, and why people are often reluctant to spoil anything. Because it's the game's equivalent of a permanent upgrade. And because the upgrade is just knowledge, there's no way to remove it. Once you know, you're stuck knowing. The goal of this video is to get you interested in playing Outer Wilds. To that end, I've talked about the gameplay a lot. But what about the story? Well, I won't spoil the plot any further. I already feel uncomfortable having explained the game's premise. Seeing the sun explode for the first time and realizing you're in a time loop really should have been something you experienced blind. But what I will say is that the story is wonderful, and it didn't have to be. Most of the enjoyment people are going to get out of this kind of game is going to come from the journey. Unraveling the mysteries that surround you is the motivation, but often that motivation is just an excuse. The important part is not the answers, but the process of uncovering those answers. Outer Wilds, though, was not satisfied in having just a good enough story. All of its plot lines end in meaningful and satisfying ways, and those plot lines weave together with the ending to make a larger point. The gameplay alone would have made Outer Wilds a great game, but when taken as a whole, the journey and the ending make it into a masterpiece. And that's the end of this video. As always, thank you very much for watching.